So today, joining us live at the Eduscope Voice Studios is a highly valued resource person. And I have a very strong profile of the guest who is joining with us today. So let me dive into that profile itself. And he is currently the Pro Vice Chancellor Academic at Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology. And he is also Professor Emeritus, University of Moratuwa, and the former Deputy Vice Chancellor at University of Moratuwa. He is a chartered engineer of the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, corporate member and a past president of Sri Lanka Energy Managers Association, fellow and past president of Lanka Association of Building Services Engineers, fellow National Academy of Sciences Sri Lanka. He has served as a visiting faculty member of AIT, Thailand, and as a visiting professor at the Toyohashi University of Technology in Japan, and has been involved in the higher education and in the research sector for over past 35 years. He has also held a post as a member of the Public Utilities Commission in Sri Lanka, Chairman, National Institute of Fisheries and Nautical Engineering, member of Board of Directors, National Engineering Research and Development Center in Sri Lanka. He is none other than Professor 𝐏𝐫𝐸𝐿𝐬𝐬𝐨𝐫. Professor, let me firstly thank you for accepting my invitation and being with us today despite your very busy schedule. So it means a lot to us. Professor, diving into the discussion that we are supposed to plan today, Professor, the education sector has evolved drastically over the past couple of decades, and we could see a significant increase in trends, especially given that AI has come into the picture over the past 3 to 4 years. Professor, in your perspective, what would be the key turning points and how has education evolved over the past couple of decades?
Yeah. First of all, let me thank you for inviting me to be associated with this session, where I would try my best to share my experience, as you indicated in the colorful introduction that you made. Right. Answering your question, let me first give a bit of a flavor of what actually I feel the education is that, right? So I believe the education is that something that will invoke a natural gift of a person to translate that into a capability where that person can live harmoniously, assisting the surrounding, and also to uplift the surrounding around him. So education process will provide that transformation. And this has been the key philosophy of education. And in the current context, answering your question, what I have seen is that it has made a transition at 3 levels. First, I would say the education has made a transition in its philosophy, then the education process, and also in terms of the changes in, or the transition in resources. If I take the first one, the philosophy, how it has changed, is that, okay, earlier education was just an acquisition of knowledge, and then that knowledge is considered as a very valuable resource, and that gave the leverage to the person who has acquired the knowledge. But now that is no longer the case. Its knowledge is there, but it is more the capabilities, that capability that is comprised of the knowledge, and also the competencies that you develop, and the third element is the attitude. So knowledge element, the competency element, attitude element, putting together will develop the capability of the person. So as opposed to the previously, when it comes to the element of the philosophy, opposed to only the knowledge acquisition, this has expanded to additional dimensions that enables you to, what I said at the beginning, unveiling the natural gift to the capabilities. The second change that I see that has taken place is that education in earlier days, it was a static thing. You follow a program and that will enable you to and empower you for the lifetime. And now the education is not static, it is dynamic. It's with very short timelines or time constants. So as opposed to the knowledge acquisition, you have to be a person who is going to be a learner, who develop the learning capability for the lifetime learning.
Got it.
That's the change in philosophy. And also in the process, where earlier the education was just teacher coming and disseminating the knowledge that he or she has acquired, whereas now the education is that more student looks for information, student is compelled to look for information, and the role of the teacher has become probably complementary. The third element is the resource. Good olden days, there was basically not even chairs, right? So yes, you could do your education because it was just limited to the knowledge acquisition. But now it is an amount of digital resources needed to do an effective and efficient education process, and also the capabilities of the teacher and also the student to work in terms of this digitalized platform as a resource change, that as opposed to what we used to have in an education platform. So
right. Professor, I think we were able to dig deep into that topic, and the certain points that you brought up, Professor, they're quite timely. And the willingness to unlearn and then learn is the attitude that we need to bring forward. And I am strongly believe and strongly agree with your point on that, Professor, because right now, if you take the current scenarios, there is an overload of information and overload of content.
Yes.
So we have to be open-minded when it comes to scenarios like that, and then to filter the content and then to decide what best suits us would be the way to go forward. So I think with your points on the table, Professor, we clearly could use that as the stepping stone to decide how the future of education is going to be. I think we can get a slide start on that as well. So we will discuss it on details on that point, Professor. Professor, just to add on to the previous question, I'm sure we discussed how it has changed over the past couple of years. But Professor, if you are to say the main difference between the past and the present learning environments, how would you put that into the picture, Professor?
Yeah, in the past, as I said, the learning environment is basically the knowledge that has been acquired, and it's considered to be a treasure, and then that's communicated to the class or the students. And obviously, a typical feature would be for the students who are above average is capable of going beyond the capabilities of a teacher, very rarely.
Yes.
Right? So therefore, as a result, year on year, our generation, only a fraction of students in a class can develop capabilities beyond the teacher, because it's a case of the knowledge that has been disseminated being communicated. Whereas in the modern, the target would be all the students. The bottom line, all the students should have developed capabilities to go beyond the teacher's capabilities, exactly, yeah, right? Yeah. So that's the mark difference that we can see. That's because that in the current world, the philosophy is not merely based on the knowledge element, but the attitudes and then the environment that is provided for you to go out and learn on your own. Obviously, a single person teacher cannot do that for all the students. So here, all the students can do that. So that's a completely different scenario compared to the previous location, the condition.
Right. Professor, would you agree if I make the statement that technology coming into the picture has disrupted the traditional environments of learning and has brought in a common ground where everybody is a learner?
Yes.
What would you say on that, Professor?
Absolutely. So technology has brought the element of disruption, but in a positive sense. As I said at the very beginning, education is unveiling your gift. So disruption in the process has brought a dimension where everybody his own talent can be enhanced irrespective of what the teacher's capability is like. Teacher has become basically a guide like, and so therefore the technology disruption in technology has enabled every student to take the advantage as per his or her capability and become and develop the capacity and capabilities to suit how he plans to develop a professional career or lifelong career in life.
Right.
So definitely that's technology has been
that complements the scenario, Professor, right?
That's right.
Professor, I would like to position a thought on this line of thinking, that is, technology has enhanced education without a doubt. But some would say that it's a double-edged sword. But coming from a technological background myself and being in that space for a very long time, building education technologies to institutes and universities, I see that it's important to embrace technology, but it's also important to draw a line with technology. Because, Professor, it's important that we understand the fundamentals of learning and education, because in the absence of the fundamentals, I doubt that there would be a future. Professor, do you think that the traditional norm of education, the traditional process of learning would eventually be challenged as a result of this uprising technology? And eventually, with that challenge the educators at some point, Professor?
Definitely it will challenge to some extent. I would say to a large extent, because there the students will see the opportunities, right? So how the things get unveiled, and therefore the teachers will have to also to get adapted to the situation where
exactly,
how the technology is going to provide that platform. So that's a challenge that the teachers will have to face, because definitely there is going to be a difference in generations, and each generation will have different dynamics of adapting the technology, and then teachers should see how the students that generation will adapt the technologies, and therefore they will have to get themselves adjusted to that. So typical is that, okay, as an example, we see that this generative AI, right? The learning process, how generating AI can be used, and the teachers should see how positively that can be accommodated.
Precisely.
Seeing that the overall objective is that, okay, in the modern learning process, you develop your critical thinking, independent learning ability, and also see how, based on your passion, how you develop your capabilities. So the technology, like things like generative AI, will provide these pathways. So teachers will have a challenge first to visualize that that gives an advantage, that disruption will give an advantage. But how that can fall in line with their normal way of teaching process will have to, synchronizing will have to be identified. Should not say that, okay, categorically this is something that doesn't fall into my way of teaching, but it's more a complementary thing that should be seen from a perspective and potential for the student to have open-minded and develop the capability rather than sticking to his or her way of teaching.
I think, Professor, that's very well put when you look at the current domain. And Professor, just to add on to that discussion point where we are driving this discussion into as we speak, Professor, we have often seen challenges in embracing this technology. So one major milestone that needs to be achieved is the awareness of technology and technology literacy.
Yeah.
Professor, I personally see that there are a couple of hurdles that needs to be bypassed in order to achieve it, and especially in the sectors of education. It can be the educators, it can even be the students. So knowledge dissemination, yes, it's already available. But if we have a mechanism that can be streamlined, where we can process this knowledge transfer in a methodical mechanism, Professor, I believe that we will have a larger population who will embrace this without a doubt. Professor, would you like to share some thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, definitely. As I said, the current generation is, I mean, their skill levels in adapting digital technologies and IT-based stuff is much evolved than the previous generation. So, therefore, there should be adequate support for them to get adapted to without much difficulty.
Right.
And then they can master it and then use it in their learning process,
making the entrance easier. Right?
Exactly, because if you say during the COVID period, what we encountered that, okay, we had to get ourselves connected to the learning platforms through Zoom and
Teams, Google Meet, yes.
But we know very well that in remote areas, well, one is technology access. The other one is that, okay, the way that the students are knowledgeable to reach out to these services was also questionable.
Yes.
So then, how this can be made available to them on a common platform is essential. So that can be through, well, TV education, etc. programs, and then because that's the common media that they can get.
Correct.
But
Yes.
this would be available on YouTube, etc.
Yes.
But again, that will have limited access to people who are in rural areas and remote areas. So the more accessible mechanism would be the television, and so generic programs through television might help them to get acquainted with this technology.
Precisely, Professor. I think once the dissemination is sorted out, I'm pretty sure more will come into the picture and more will embrace the adaptiveness towards the technology and the trends, like you correctly put in the previous statement itself. Professor, would you say that building up a policy of that nature would definitely assist to elevate the status where we are right now?
Definitely, because now it is done probably not in a very systematic way. Those who have means and then maybe some guidance from parents or depending on the institute will have. But it's not all, because education is for all. I mean, that should be embedded in government policy, and then especially, well, majority of our education system is state-owned, state managed. They should bring these elements onto the education platform, and then that make it available to everyone. because we have a small population. So we need to have higher fraction of people educated, in the sense capable of doing things at their own gift,
Correct. So a policy or a framework would definitely enhance that, Professor, right? To bring them into that picture.
I believe the current education reforms is in the process of considering this element, but still we have not seen the final form of that.
Right. Professor, this question is far more directed towards the application of knowledge. So the question I have here is the industry collaborations and practical learning. How important is it towards education? To give you a first-hand experience, Professor, I myself am an entrepreneur, and we studied, graduated, and then wanted to pursue the entrepreneurship career, wanted to become entrepreneurs, and then to create something new, and then to change. But like you correctly mentioned a while back, Professor, during your statement, it's not just a matter of gathering information, it's how you apply and how you become a critical thinker. Professor, industry collaborations and practical application of what you learned. What are your thoughts on that? How would you advise the younger generation to make the most out of it?
Yeah. As I said, in the education, well, the confidence element is important. And now one of the attributes should be confidence. You should be able to make autonomous decisions or responsibility, so the confidence is important. Confidence comes where, okay, with experience, you have handled a situation, and then you are guided and you develop your certain
skill, right? Yes.
Skills, attributes, so that you can apply it to another situation. End of the day, after completing an education program, you are in the society. You will be interacting with the marketplace. Either you work for a corporate, or the current trend is that your capabilities. I always use the word capability to say that it encompasses knowledge, the competencies, and also the attitude. Attitude is a very important element. This is something that the education should do, and where you can apply them in a real life situation. So for that to be done in a confidence manner, you should have an idea of what is going to be the actual real life marketplace or the world that you are entering into.
Exactly.
So if it is done subsequent to your education program, well, it is okay. But if it can be done at some point with the integration of the flavor of the industry or the real world that you are going to face, then it will be much effective. So therefore, the education institutes and the educators have an important task to get the feedback or inputs, or what is the kind of market that the students will be encountering into an education program. So therefore, in tertiary education, you always have the industry inputs to see what are the types of skills that they would need, what are the types of competencies that they would need, so that they can be confident in applying. Because if the confidence element is not there, you may be employed by someone, but you may not be able to deliver. Even self-employment, it's based on your confidence. So industry element is important. In most of the developed countries, during secondary school, they are engaged with industry, some level of social activity or industry or outside world, so that they will see the education as an element that is going to be useful in real life, rather than an element isolated to school or a particular entity.
To solve a real world problem, right?
Yeah. But that kind of thing is not really available in the Sri Lankan education system. Maybe because of not properly organized. So if that can be done at school level, maybe some international schools might be doing it. But that is important, because where you are going to enter, you get a feeling while you are studying the program.
I think, Professor, you put it very well during that explanation, because it's very important that we use our skills to solve a real world problem. And the current scenario and the most challenges that the students face is that the existing curriculum alone is not going to get them a job. And then they start complaining, okay, I don't have a job at the moment. I'm unemployed. I've studied so much. I've got a GPA of this much. But when you go for an interview, Professor, the industry is very hesitant to bring on board certain individuals just because their ability to think outside the box, apply the knowledge, to put some logical thinking into the picture, it's null at certain times. So incorporating the industry experience into the curriculum at some point, whether it's going to be the secondary education or it's tertiary education, I think, Professor, it's high time that these problems are addressed, because the West as well as the East has already accepted this, and you have industry training, you have industry visits, you have what do you call this is internships coming straight away into the industry. Right. And not just an internship just for the sake of doing an internship, right? Because we've seen, Professor, the internships today are done just because it's a part of the curriculum.
As an obligation.
As an obligation. You need to achieve that tick so that you could get the degree per se. But what that did is actually that didn't allow the student to go and get the necessary expertise in the domain that he is supposed to be studying. So it could be a BSc honors degree the student is doing in IT, but the student goes in sales and marketing just because you need to achieve it. Yes. So I think that turn will have to come, Professor, eventually, because it will be a vocational based industry down the line rather than a traditional book centric delivery.
Kind of.
Yes. So that is something that is very important. Yeah. For students to come on board.
When you are during your education program, if you are engaged with industry, you can then figure out the passion, where your passion should be will be clearly identified when you start early. Otherwise, because then you can make slight adjustments in your program.
Correct.
The module selection, the course selection, then the projects, etc. when it comes to the higher level of upper secondary, or because to suit, and ending up with developing a capability, not just a set of books, but set of attributes that you carry at the end of the day.
Precisely. Yeah. So that's one of the major points, Professor, like you correctly put, that I believe that the education sector would be tightly integrated with the industry, because then only you get the chance to witness how the world grows and to move with the trends along with it.
Yeah. So industry means not only this manufacturing kind of thing,
correct.
Whatever anything other than, that's the marketplace.
Yes,
so
yes.
The entire spectrum of so for each one, depending on capabilities and passion. For example, a person who is passionate in cookery can end up with with capabilities that he can be the top class, the world class chef kind of thing.
Yes.
So for each domain, each discipline, you should have people working like that. So for that, this industry engagement at the early stage would unveil their curiosity, and then provide the necessary direction.
Correct, exactly. Professor, the next question that I have in line for you is a little bit different to what we wanted to discuss or what we have discussed so far. Professor, you yourself belong to a different generation. I myself belong to a different generation, and right now we are encountering with a total different generation. It's the Gen Zs, and I think the Gen Alpha is coming on board. So they have worked out the nomenclature as such. Professor, with our experience, we see down the line the resistance and the lethargicness to take on board responsibility, and then to stand down from accountability has grown to a larger scale over the past couple of years. And as a result, Professor, this has challenged the industry, number one, because we see it firsthand, and also has challenged the education spectrum because we clearly don't have an idea on where we need to adapt to, whether it's the older generation who needs to adapt to the newer generation, or whether it's the newer generation who needs to be adapted into the older generation. Professor, I personally feel that there's a clash there. Professor, what would be the compromise?
Well, for me, well, if you take the normal evolution, so the time evolution takes in one direction, in one particular direction. So I always think that the new generation will meet the requirements, the contemporary requirements that they are going to be engaged with. And then the previous generation, because they have gone through a particular window, facing the dynamics of that particular window.
Yes.
So what the previous generation should do is that, well, they should be creating an enabling environment for them to get adapted to their their current generation of the current window of the new generation, because they are the people who would see the dynamics clearly, the requirements, and how the generation should get adjusted to them. How a previous generation can think of a situation where a new window is encountered by the new generation. What are the things that they are going to feel? Their sentiments will not be properly. So there should be, of course, there's a transition, but the right to decide will be with in my opinion, with the new generation. And they will make their decisions and then get adjusted and pass the baton to the next generation.
To the future generation.
Yes.
Right. So it's like the previous generation trying to adapt into the newer generation, and the newer generation doing their best so that they could adapt into the future generation to come.
Exactly. So transfer of baton, but it has to be, ideally it has to be seamless. So the compromise lies between when the transition takes place, and not to say that the previous generation, okay, this is what is right and you should get adapted, not in the reverse direction. I always believe that the time flows in like the entropy, it goes in one direction, so we have to follow. That's the natural the dynamics of the entire universe, so we have to get adapted to that.
That's very correctly put into words, Professor, because the famous statement is where we say don't judge a book by its cover, because we see young talent who doesn't look much. Yeah. I mean, when we just have a discussion with them, we don't feel much, but when they come into the expertise, whether it's going to be engineering and it's going to be the field of microbiology, biotechnology, the way that they deliver, to be very honest, Professor, it's surprising. And we would be making a grave mistake if we were to draw conclusions based on how the outlooks were. Yes. Because eventually it's talent, and yes, and it's the future of our generation, and it's the future of our country, and neglecting them based just on an outlook would be a grave mistake that we would do, Professor.
Ideal would be the previous generation or the current generation. I would say the other one is the future generation. Current generation should think, how did they manage with their previous generation? Yes. They would have thought that, okay, we were right, and they are right. That's why they think that this should be communicated to the next generation, because they think that they are right. So that's relative. So we should allow the flow to take place in that direction.
Exactly. Professor, I think we are at the conclusion of this entire discussion, and I think this was a timely and a highly valued discussion, because it's important that we share knowledge and share certain points in the form of discussion, because the audience needs to get access to certain information where they can later process and then evolve as a result of the information. So that is one of the key reasons why we wanted to bring Eduscope voice into the picture, because we believe that the knowledge of highly valued individuals like yourselves would eventually create certain portals where the traditional mindset of people would be disrupted, and they would be surprised about the knowledge that is brought onto the table, and their take home would actually be very different than to a traditional approach. Professor, to sum this discussion up, I would like to make a small request to see whether what actionable takeaway or the message that you would provide to two people. One is the educators, the other is the students. What would they be to the educators, Professor?
Yeah, for the educators, my message would be that, okay, as we discussed, the requirements of the next generation is going to be, well, ideally different from the current. And then educators should see that potential, that direction, and the mechanisms and the learning process should facilitate that. So therefore, the education process, the mechanisms, instruments should be different, targeting the development of capabilities and giving freedom within that capabilities to develop their own passion, their own direction to go into the future and to the industry. And also from the receiving point, the student point,
students, yes,
they should also see that, okay, that's the flexibility that they have obtained, received, gained, and then how best that they can use to develop their capabilities in terms of being confident, responsible, autonomous, and making the correct decision to suit their natural gift. So if everybody does that, our planet will be filled of people who would be having their own passion being translated into the actual actionable realizations. We'll have a better, effective, and more productive society.
Right. Professor, let me once again thank you for visiting us at our studio and then sharing this valued information despite your busy schedule. So, Professor, are there any pointers or tips to us on how we can further improve this? We would love to hear from you, and what your thoughts on this would be, please.
I think what I could say is that, okay, being closely related to a service provider in digital learning process. So if the learning support and the platforms can be expanded, evolve in more flexible learning processes that will enable the individuals to have their own pace of learning and then open up their own horizon so that they can decide on their own with the advice and the guidance of the teacher. Teacher would play more role of guide rather than the director. And so if that kind of platform, then the devices can be supported to enhance this effectiveness of learning in that direction, that would be a good contribution from your side as a service provider.
Thank you, Professor. We are currently actually looking at a mass scale expansion, like you correctly put, because we believe it's a matter of expanding. Because that expansion allows people to come on board very easily, because when we reduce that onboarding tension, which is capital in the first place, if we are able to eliminate that capital and the entrance barrier, we strongly believe that we'll be able to bring something more, and we'll be able to contribute vastly into the country, because we as innovators and as entrepreneurs, I strongly believe it's our responsibility to serve our nation first, and then take this product and then evolve around it down the line. Professor, what would be your thoughts on this special discussion forum which we initially started on Eduscope Voice, where we bring in valued resource persons to share their knowledge? What are your thoughts on this, Professor?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent initiative, so that you will provide this platform for different people. So, which I said, I believe that each one has a distinctly different gift, and therefore capabilities combined in the gift. So different ideas coming onto the platform, seeing in different dimensions. The viewers will have an opportunity to get a broader spectrum rather than a very narrow window of opportunity to see about the education process. So on the same topics, we will have different opinions coming in, and then that can give a better understanding and opportunity to make clear decisions the way forward.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor. Right.
Thank you for inviting me.
Right.